Good day everyone. Today I will discuss to you all about cogito ergo consume or the consumer culture and the material self. Before we will start our lesson, let me read to you the objectives. After working on this module, the students must be able to explore the different aspects of self and identity, demonstrate critical reflective thought in integrating the various aspects of self and identity, identify the different forces and institutions that impact the development of various aspects of self and identity, and lastly, examines oneself against the different aspects of self discussed in class. The material self. In its widest possible sense, a man's self is the sum total of all that he can call his. It is a famous quote by William James. So for 19th century, William James said that an individual's selfhood can be broken down into several fragments, with the material self being one. Aside from the physical body, which is considered its central constituent unit, this facet of the self also includes one's closest relatives and material possessions, with a specific focus in clothes. So material things are a tangible way for people to express themselves. The material things we own expresses our emotion, how they make us feel or how we feel about how they make us look. Our clothes, the color, material, and style interact with us in a way that brings us a feel of individuality. Hermann Yolotz in Microcosmos asserted that each time we get to wear garments of varying kind is a chance for us to bring them into a relationship with the surface of our body and inject them with the very consciousness of our personal existence. So it is said that the material self is a total of all the tangible things that we own, our possessions, our home, our body. As we examine our list of responses, who are we? What are we? Whether in statements refers to one of our physical attributes or something that we own. So in short, the purchase of an item is not just considered an investment in a monetary sense, because we can always sell it sooner or later, but also from the standpoint of the material self. We develop an attachment with most of the things that we buy because we accord the same to the resources that enables us to accomplish the transaction. So why is necessity the mother of consumption? We consume because we need to. Essentials like food and clothing are bought, and so is shelter. In our every waking moment, we transact for goods and services. So in supermarkets and shopping malls, we give away what is essentially the material manifestation of our labor or our money in exchange for items, some of which we are consistently made aware through commercial advertisement. So some commercial advertisement which can be seen on Instagram. According to Barber, consumption has become so pervasive that it now seems second nature to all of us, part of our identity even. The role of products and services in our lives are now above their literal purpose, for they have become the means through which we express our lifestyle. Apparently, brands are not anymore just mere veneers on deeper identities, but have become surrogates to who we are. According also to Berger, not every society puts premium on material consumption. In some of agrarian orientation, basic subsistence is the way of life. From their perspective, food is not much bought as they are planted and eventually harvested. This stands in stark contrast with various contemporary Western cultures, which removes focus on austerity while increasing emphasis on buying. Next is I saw the sign, the semiotics of consumption. Our everyday interactions are governed by signs and symbols, even outside linguistics and literature, from which semiotic was said to have originated. We still encounter systems of code from which we draw meaning, including the typology which consumer culture operates. So according to Ferdinand de Saussure, meanings are based off conventions and are by nature arbitrary. Words, therefore, are unmotivated signs with no fixed definitions. So essentially, present always the signifier, which can be a phrase, sound, or image, and the signified or the concept of abstraction attached to it. The relationship between the two is never stable and can change over time, either at a given point or over a relative period of time. So for example, the proper meanings of the word terrorist can only be clarified if compared to similar ones, such as guerrillas, freedom fighters, and paramilitaries. This is called the paradigmatic chain, a continuum of words with identical functions that can serve as substitute for each other, though some may not be as neutral when used. So this is justified by how symbols are frequently seen as being imbued with a very specific historical or cultural significations depending on one's socio-cultural or socio-political background, which is the promotion, advertisement, commercial, and propaganda. So for Lang and Parole, as for the larger structures of language, Saussure coined the terms Lang and Parole. By definition, Lang is a language that structure that dictates the rules and conventions, while parole is any given linguistic fragment or item extracted from the very structure. So for instance, Filipino language is the Lang, and a remark or verbal utterance belonging to it is the parole.
So, good day everyone. My name is Rosmelo Hadubeza and I'm going to report denotation, connotation, and so on as part of consumer culture. So, here we can see and read semioticians repeatedly note the importance of knowing the difference between denotation and connotation. So, denotation or the object language is defined as the literal interpretation of something, while connotation pertains to culture-specific meanings and ideologies attached to it for purpose of myth-making. So here, in denotation, this is the literal interpretation of something, and it is also known as the object language. While here in connotation, it pertains to culture-specific meanings and ideologies attached to it for purpose of myth-making. So, here in connotation, according to Coward and Ellis in 1977, the connotation becomes the natural, common sense reality of products. So, example, here in Fernando Poe Jr., his denotative meaning is Filipino actor and director who once ran for president. And here in his connotative meaning, it says idol of the masses and champion of the poor, physical embodiment of righteousness and justice. So we can see the literal difference here, which is very which you can already see because denotative meaning is the literal interpretation of the actor's traits and his definition, while in connotative meaning here is the cultural specific meanings and ideology attached to his name. So we can also notice it in daily products and our things that we use every day. Example, we use our cell phone a lot. Like a cell phone is the literal definition of cell phone is, or denotation of the cell phone is a device used for call, messages, and any other stuff that you can use it. But its connotation rather is what is the importance of that phone to you. So you explain what is what is its importance and its connotative meaning for you. So next slide we have anchorage and relay. In his book The Rhetoric of the Image, Roland Barthes in 1978 wrote of two kinds of relationships between text and image: anchorage and relay. By definition, anchorage underlies the importance of text in making sense of an image, while relay puts emphasis on a more complementary relationship between the two. So, here in anchorage, it underlines the importance of text in making sense of an image. So, put this as an example. We like what I've said in our in the virtual meeting that example, you have a meme that has no text in it. So in order to understand the meme, you and other users put text on that meme so that other users will also understand the meme. So while in relay, it puts the emphasis of the more complementary relationship between the two. The relay is it puts the emphasis of the relationship between the text and the image that you are making. Example, what I mentioned earlier, the meme. So it's complementary relationship between the text that you have put in it and then the image that you have visualized. So I think that's all for um, culture. Sorry, for consumer culture. While here we need to wait lang. Oh, here's another slide for the eye. So according to Philip Kotler, there are 5 stages in so-called buyer decision process. So first is needs arousal or recognition, which is the ones to recognize the needs you want, and then information search, you search for that information, and then 3, evaluation behavior, how are you going to evaluate that uh, the product, and then 4 is purchase decision, and then 5 is post purchase feelings. Next is finally we have to move on to the Calvinist principle so that we can be on the material self. So earlier we talked about the consumer culture, and now we're going to talk about the material self. So here we have the Calvinist principle. So according to Tessel and McAren, through his life, the Protestant theologian John Calvin has passionately argued against the Catholic doctrine's espousal of asceticism. For him, it is through the consumption of material goods that people can truly fulfill God's desire. So, though it is not stated here, Calvinist principle has an a abbreviation which is TULIP, that defines as T, the total depravity, U, unconditional election, and L, the limited atonement, and I, irresistible grace, and P is for preservative of the saints. So we need to talk about this for a little while because this is important for the Calvinist principle. So T, the total depravity, is it means the humans are completely messed up by sin. So they can come to God without asking God Himself for help. So here, the humans are not able to come to God without God Himself helping them. And then U is for unconditional election. This means that God elects these Christians. Unconditional elections mean God chooses Christians as His own desire. So here is it means that God, before we are born in this world, God Himself elects us or chooses us from the other people because it is His own desires to elect us. Next is L, the limited atonement, which is the penalty of Jesus' death on the cross is limited to His people. So this means that He didn't die for the world, but for Christians. So this is the complete opposite of what they are against the Catholic doctrines that all are saved. So here they contradict that idea because in L, limited atonement is it is the death of Christ is only limited to those Christians. So yes, And I is for irresistible grace. It means that He calls you out to be saved. In the moment God called you, you have nothing to do. So here in irresistible grace, when God calls you out, you are saved, and the moment God calls you, you have nothing to do because it is His grace that saved you. Then in this process, you are regenerated from an old person to a new person because of God's grace. And then the last but not the least, the P, the perseverance of the saints, which means that if you are truly born again, you will persevere at the end of time. So here is in perseverance of the saints. It is a test that if you are really a chosen person of God, and if you are really um, uh, a Christian, you will persevere until the end. So that is the meaning of the abbreviation TULIP. That is um, the principle of part of the principle of Calvinist. Um, and that's all. Thank you for listening. I'll send this to the next. Rather, I'll give this floor to the next reporter. Thank you.
Good day. I'm Joshua Adrian Congayo. I'm going to discuss the Calvinist principle. So what is this Calvinist principle? It is the theological system of Calvin and his follower marked by strong emphasis of sovereignty of God, the depravity of humankind, and the doctrine of predestination. Calvinism presents a comprehensive view of how human life should be properly ordered personally, socially, and politically, according to the sovereign will of God. Second is the Marxist perspective. So, as we all know, the main goal of Marxism is to achieve a classless society throughout the world. As a great sounds, the most people there are many capitalist ideologies which would have to eliminate it before this could ever happen. He wrote that the power of relationship between capitalists and workers were inherently exploitative and would inevitably create class conflict. So third is the commodity fetishism. So commodity fetishism is one of Marx's most consistently enduring ideas, and it is surprisingly accessible. Commodity fetishism is the condition in which production is no longer seen as a social endeavor but as the simple exchange of money and commodities. So, fourth is the alienation of Marxist. So, for Marxist, true self-determination must rather consist in the imposition of human control on the social condition of human production. Therefore, the significance of alienation is that it highlights why human was only be free by regaining control of their material. That's all for my topic. I hope you learned something from it. Thank you.
Unit Summary. The material self, according to William James, is centered on the physical body, with emphasis on one's material possessions and the family to which he or she belongs. This figures in quite prominently within the broader context of consumer culture, which tells of how the act of consumption, with mass media's goading, is normalized in a given society. Usually this is done through the use of signs and symbols and the manipulation of their meanings. This, in turn, affects the one's identity formation, as our material possessions and preferred lifestyle slowly become extensions of who we are. Affected as well is our behavior in relation to consumer goods, enshrined in Philip Kotler's buyer's decision process. One's proclivity for buying things, as theologian John Calvin explains, but is willed by God, as it is a clear-cut manifestation of how one's hard work can be divinely compensated in concrete form. While for Karl Marx, consumption is momentary escape from imposed labor in a capitalist society, often resulting in alienation. So that is all for our report. Thank you for watching.